Hello and welcome to my first ever episode of the Triathlon Debs YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. I'm Debs. I'm a 43-year-old working triathlon mum. I've been a physio for over 20 years working on the intensive care unit. I've been married to my husband Mark for 16 years. I'd be lost without him. He's a great bike mechanic. He's really good at tech support. No, all joking aside, he's actually really supportive of what I do. He lets me train pretty much whenever I want to. He comes along to quite a few of my races.
5 times para-athlete medalist.
Go on, Debs! Go on, Debs! Go on, Debs! That's it, get that power down.
Me on and be some backup. I've got a 7-year-old daughter called Amelia. At the age of 31 in 2011, I randomly made the transition from being a county badminton player that I'd been for 20 years to a triathlete. I've always been really sporty. I played every sport going under the sun at school and was on all the school sports teams. I started playing county badminton when I was 11. I played over 20 seasons consecutively of badminton at a pretty high standard. I found at the age of about 30 my national ranking was sitting around the top 100, just floating in and out of it, but I just felt I wasn't able to improve anymore. I was just quite static with what I was able to achieve. So I fancied doing something a bit different. The season for badminton is quite short, so I was also getting quite bored in the off season, and I'd been toying around with the idea of doing a triathlon for a few years. I've always run since being a child. My dad was a runner, so I started running at an early age. I did a lot of mountain biking at that point, so I was pretty bike fit, but I was absolutely terrible at swimming. I could do granny breaststroke, plodding up and down with my head above water for an hour, really slowly, but get me doing front crawl and I could literally do 2 laps in a row. So, as you did in those days, I got a book out of the library. I taught myself how to swim at the age of 31. That took quite a lot of effort. I bought myself a second-hand bike for £100 that was far too big for me, and I bought myself a really dodgy 2-piece tri-suit that cost about 15 quid. In the August of that year, I bit the bullet. I entered Broxtowe Sprint Triathlon, which is just a local race for me, and completed my first triathlon in the grand time of about an hour and a half. I've never picked up my badminton racket since then. Took full time to doing triathlon, and I've been racing for over 12 years since then. This isn't the story of a couch potato to a triathlete. As I said previously, I was already relatively fit, nor is it the story of a beginner becoming a professional. I'm never going to be a GB age grouper, I'm never going to be a professional. What I am is your average working class mum trying to juggle work and family life along with training. I'd like to think that I'm a reasonable age grouper. I'm a weekend warrior who trains really hard, and I'm willing to suffer to get the best out of my body. I'd like to think that I've gained quite a lot of knowledge and experience over the last 12 years, and what I'd like to do is be a role model and encourage others to either take up the sport or maybe encourage people and give them support in terms of progressing to maybe longer distances or being more competitive within the races that they're doing. So maybe from just aiming to complete a triathlon, to aiming for specific times, or maybe even getting on podiums in age group races. I want to show what a middle-aged working mum can achieve with a bit of structure and some commitment, and I want to just encourage others to chase their dreams. What's my resume? Oh, that makes me sound like I'm really good. I'm not, but I have done quite a lot of races. So I took it up in 2011, which began with Broxtowe Sprint Triathlon, just a local pool-based sprint, which I completed in about 1.5 hours. In 2012, I joined Mansfield Triathlon Club, and I competed in some of the local One Step Beyond Midland Sprint Series.
Go on, Debs. Up on here, keep it going.
Can't feel my feet.
I started doing open water swimming up at Doncaster, up at Tyrone Lakes, and I entered Hatfield Sprint and then ventured into standard distance and did Doncaster standard distance. By 2014 I was getting a lot more confident with doing open water races. I'd done a few standard distance ones by then, so I decided to make the step up and go down and do one of the big races in London. At that point, the London ITU series, which the pros raced in, was being held in Hyde Park, so we got to race on the Saturday before the pros raced along exactly the same course as the pros and got to finish down the blue carpet. It was an absolutely fantastic experience. I'd never entered a big race with that number of athletes in it, and you know, the number of people cheering us along was absolutely fantastic. I also cycled to London to Paris that year with my husband, so that was really getting my cycling base miles up. We went on holiday to Chamonix that year, doing some climbing and some cycling. While we were there, we were sort of going over the border into Switzerland, and we realised that the Dauphiné was on, so we actually cycled to one of the mountaintop finishers to watch the Dauphiné. I got a bit cocky at that point and thought, if I can cycle one of the Dauphiné stages, or the mountaintop finish to the Dauphiné stages, there's no reason why I can't do a 70.3. So whilst we were away on holiday, I entered a 70.3, a local one called the Rubicon, which was just up in Ripon, and that was it. That was my entry into 70.3 racing. A couple of weeks after we came back from Chamonix, I'd entered the NHS National Championships, which was in its fair infancy at that point. I think it was only about, in fact it might have been the first year that it was running, either the first or second year that it was running. And I think I timed it absolutely perfectly with coming down from a bit of unintentional altitude training, and I managed to sneak on the podium and get third. So that year in the September, I entered the Rubicon, which I completed in just over 6 hours. I will point out at this point that the bike course was a little bit short. I think it was about 5 miles short. I think it was about 51 miles or something like that, and it was an absolutely pan flat course, so that 6 hours and 6 minutes with my time sounds slightly better than what it really was. I thought that I would do the Rubicon, be absolutely exhausted and hate it and kind of go, God, I'm never doing that again. But I'd done so much training that year that I got over the finish line and kind of thought, that was alright, I've got a bit left more in the tank. So that just kind of lit the fire further then with it. I didn't race at all in 2015. I had IVF and my beautiful daughter, so I took it easy for that year. I also fractured my coccyx during childbirth, so that kind of put me back from cycling for a little bit. And then in 2016 I just got back into it again, just by doing local low-key sprint races really. 2017 I did some sprints. I did Rother Valley and the Battle of Bosworth standard distance. We also did the National Club Relays with Mansfield Triathlon Club at Home Pierpont, which is an absolutely fantastic, just bonkers crazy event with it, just really good fun. I also did the Rutland 4K swim, which was absolutely dreadful. It was really windy that day and it felt like I was doing a sea swim, and I've never really done much sea swimming. 2018 I made the decision to do the Outlaw Full at Nottingham as a relay. So I did the swim, my husband Mark did the bike ride, and a lad from the Tri Club called Chris Martin did the run for us.
Minutes, I would say, for our first swimmers. And you'll see the run along the tarmac in front of transition and re-enter the water on the far side. Start laps 2 and 3. The exit for the swimmers up near the tower.
Congratulations to you! Another relay! Team Cyclocross!
So that was a really good experience at just doing something a bit longer. Swimming probably is my stronger discipline now, ironically, but I did spend a lot of that year training for the swim with it, so my biking and my running did go out the window a little bit. So then I just did a couple of local sprint triathlons. I did Erewash, which I won my age group. In 2019 I decided that I wanted to have a good stab at doing the Midland Sprint Series, which is a local series of races run by OSB. Consists of the David Lloyd Lincoln Triathlon, Southern Triathlon, Not Sprint Triathlon and Woodall Spa. I think I'd done all of these races actually individually, but the Midland Sprint Series is you get a ranking points for each of the races and then you get an overall series winner. So I decided that I wanted to have a go at that. To be honest, felt absolutely on fire that season. I think that's probably one of my best seasons that I've had. I finished second or third in my age group in all of those races, and managed to come second overall in the Midland Sprint Series, so I was really, really pleased with that. After having such a good year in 2019, I decided that in 2020 I wanted to have a go at going long again. So I entered the Outlaw Half at Nottingham. As we all know, 2020 was the year that COVID hit and all the racing got cancelled. It was a pretty tough year for me, like it was for many people. Being the physiotherapy team leader on intensive care, we quadrupled our capacity on there. So work was just an absolute mental period for the whole of that year, really. In end of May, I unfortunately had a crash on my bike. I was out riding, it was a really clear day, I was on a perfectly long straight road with excellent visibility, and just as I approached the junction a car decided to pull straight out into me. I was doing 26 miles an hour at that point according to my Strava, which I did remember to stop, and the car just pulled straight out into me, so I basically headbutted the car at 26 miles an hour. Fractured my cheekbone, some quite significant sort of trauma around my eye socket, broke my two front teeth, fractured my left scaphoid, did a bit of damage, sort of soft tissue damage to my neck and my shoulder, and just some lacerations really. So that was quite a tough year, trying to regain my fitness from that whilst working under quite a stressful situation, as well as trying to homeschool and everything else that everybody else was trying to do in that year. So towards the end of the summer, OSB had identified that they felt that they could put the Outlaw X on, and I think it was pretty much one of the only races that happened that year during COVID. Anybody who'd entered the Outlaw Half got the opportunity to transfer to the X if they wanted to. Me being me, slightly stubborn, decided that having a bike crash wasn't enough of a reason not to race that year, so I decided to transfer the X, so then spent the whole of the summer trying to regain my fitness with the injuries that I got. I was really pleased with how I did at the X. I think I came 28th in my age group. The swim was shortened, unfortunately, because of the cold air temperature rather than the cold water temperature, but OSB did an absolutely fantastic job of putting that race on, and it felt like a massive achievement after coming back from the crash, working through intensive care. Getting to compete at that was an absolutely phenomenal experience, really.
Shatter. Shatter. You feel alright? You feel alright?
I thought the bike was brutal.
Was it? Go on, Debs!
2021, I decided after having such a stressful and hard year trying to get back to 70.3 standard that I wasn't going to do a 70.3. So I did some of the Castle virtual race series. So I did their duathlon, came first in my age group. I did Castle Howard, Olympic distance, which is an awful race. I don't know why I did it. I'm absolutely terrible on hills on the bike. I'm terrible on the hills running. So I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but I did it with a couple of friends from the Tri Club. It was a nice experience doing, it was quite a big race, and a really nice venue, but yeah, the course itself just didn't suit me at all. I also did Compton Verney standard distance and Bassett Law Sprint Triathlon, which is a sort of super local race that a lot of us from Mansfield Tri Club try and do. In 2022, I decided that it was my year to kind of go long again, and I wanted to do some 70.3s and try and be as competitive as I can do. The Castle Virtual Race Series was still being run at that point because we were still kind of coming out of COVID. So this time I did the standard distance virtual triathlon and came first in my age group. I also did Clumber duathlon, which I'm not very good at duathlons. Swimming's probably my best discipline. I'm not a super fast runner, whereas a lot of people who do duathlons are. So I think I came something like 15th out of 21st in my age group with it. Found a really nice race up in Brigg called the Keogh Brigg Bomber, which was a standard distance race. Quite a small, low-key one run by Lynx Quad, and I came second in my age group, and that was kind of my main warm-up race in preparation for doing the Outlaw Half Hokum, which was going to be my main race for the season. I raced Hokum, and to be honest, I was really chuffed with it. One of my goals for this season was to try and get stronger on the bike. I'd always held something back on the bike to save it for the run when I'd done a half distance before, and I really wanted to be much more competitive on the bike with it. I think I came 18th in my age group, and came in. I wanted to get under 6.5 hours, and I did 6 hours 20, but was really chuffed with how I performed there. However, at the end of that, I did do the sort of typical, oh, it's only July and I'm super race fit, it seems a shame to waste it. So I decided to enter the Outlaw X, which is in the end of September, which also happened to be the British Middle Distance Championships. So to be honest, that went really well. It made it a long year. I'd started training on January the 1st, so it felt like a really long slog going all the way through till the end of September with it. But I felt absolutely on fire for it. It's a pretty undulating bike course, to be honest. The weather's not always the nicest at that time of year. Unfortunately, the swim was shortened again due to the air temperature and the British Triathlon regulations on that. So that put me at a bit of a disadvantage because it was only a 750 metre swim, and the swim's my strongest discipline. But felt really strong on the bike, to be honest. Normally I'm a little bit cautious on the bike. I don't give it everything. I hold back a bit, knowing that I've got that half marathon at the end. But I just decided to throw caution to the wind, and I think doing Hokum early on in the year had kind of given me the confidence that even if I pushed hard, my half marathon time was there or thereabouts still. So I decided to just go for it and absolutely pegged it on the bike. Averaged over 17 miles an hour, which in fairly windy conditions and a fairly undulating course is pretty good for me, to be honest. So really chuffed with that, and then still managed to hold my half marathon time. So I managed to dip just under 6 hours on that. I think it was about 5 hours 52. I will just put a bit of a disclaimer. I'm probably never going to go under 6 hours. It was only because it was a shortened swim down to 750 metres, that bought me probably a good 25 minutes worth of time with it. But yeah, was really chuffed with that. I came 10th in my age group, 61st female overall, which I think at the British Championships for someone at my level, I think I was kind of punching above my weight. So really happy with that season. So in total, I think I've done about 48 multisport races over the last 12 years or so. I've done quite a few other bits and bobs like 10Ks, half marathons, sportives, those kind of things as well. But I think, if my maths serves me correctly, I've done 3 duathlons and 3aquathons, which are just swim runs. I've done about 42 triathlons. So I've done 1 full Ironman distance relay, I've done 4 70.3s, I've done 9 standard or Olympic distance races, I've done 1 super sprint. They're pretty horrible, if I'm honest. I never did another one again. I would say they're far more painful than doing a half Ironman, because you just literally have to go hell for leather for the gun. So yeah, they're proper sort of kind of puke at the finish line ones. And then all the rest of them are sprint triathlons, which I think by my reckoning makes about 21 sprint triathlons. So yeah, so a fairly wide range of races. I think the main thing that's missing is a full Ironman, which I would like to do one day, but I think you know, I've got a 7-year-old daughter who I want to spend time with, and I do also work quite a lot of hours, so I think that's something that will probably be on the cards a few years down the line, you know, when she's a teenager and doesn't want to spend any time with mum anymore. And that's a wrap from my first ever episode of the Triathlon Debs YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe, and hopefully see you in a few days for my next release.